Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. It is conference championship weekend, which means there are so many great ranked versus ranked matchups across the country featuring teams that are, of course, trying to be crowned champions of their individual conferences, but are also vying for college football playoff spots, maybe New Year's Six bowl spots. And that is certainly the case in the SEC championship game. Always one of the best games of championship weekend. This year is no exception as number 1 Alabama takes on number 11 Florida down in Atlanta. Those rankings, of course, from the AP poll, not the College Football Playoff Committee. And we're here to break down everything you need to know for this SEC title game. The offense, the defense, the keys to the game, and of course who we have winning the SEC title. But, this game would be a lot better. It would be a lot better if it was still a top 6, top 7 matchup had Florida just not lost to LSU last week. Marco Wilson doesn't throw that shoe. It's number 1 Alabama and probably number 6 Florida. The winner absolutely clinching themselves a spot in the college football playoff. But regardless, we'll break down scenarios in a second. Regardless, this is still going to be a great game. And there's a lot of history in this game. This is going to be the 10th meeting between Alabama and Florida in the SEC championship game. The 10th meeting between these two schools in the title game. Of course, we all know they were the two teams that met in the first ever SEC title game back in 1992. It's the first time they're meeting in the title game since 2016. Florida making their first title appearance since 2016. And Alabama leads the series against Florida in the title game 5-4. They've won the last 3 SEC titles against Florida. They've won 5 over the Gators. The Gators have won 4 over the Tide. Florida, of course, looking to win their first SEC title since 2008, all the way back to the Tim Tebow days. So Alabama certainly not on such a lengthy drought compared to the Gators, and it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot for Florida to end that drought. Vegas thinks so too. Alabama, a 17-point favorite as of right now. A 17-point favorite going into this matchup Saturday night in Atlanta. That spread, of course, brought to you guys by BETNOW.EU. Make sure to check out their promo code and their link down in the description below. If you use our code GRIDIRON over there, you get that 100% sign-up bonus and that $1,000 cash sign-up bonus. It is legit. It is for real. It is the best betting site out there. So make sure to go check out that promo code. Check out that link, BETNOW.EU. You're going to want to place your bets there for championship weekend. So let's go ahead and take a look at both sides here, the offenses and the defenses in Alabama, Florida. Let's take a look at the Crimson Tide right now, the designated road team in Atlanta. They'll be wearing their white jerseys, white uniforms, of course. This is going to be the best side of the ball for both teams. This is why this game was so intriguing and going to be so fun for us, is because these two teams have arguably the top 2 quarterbacks in the country. The top 2 quarterbacks certainly in the Heisman Trophy race as of right now, in Mac Jones for Alabama and Kyle Trask for Florida. You look at Alabama, Mac Jones has thrown for over 3,300 yards, 27 touchdowns to just 3 interceptions. He's completing 76.4% of his passes. So Mac Jones, he had major, huge shoes to fill replacing Tua Tagovailoa. He got a few games under his belt last year over the course of the end of the season, steps into that starting role and has thrived. I think has done better than anyone expected. Because I don't think many thought Mac Jones would be a legitimate Heisman contender back when the season began. So Mac Jones, he's the leader of his Alabama team, a major reason for their success. But when I look at Alabama's offense, I always say they got the big 3. Not just Jones at quarterback, but Najee Harris at running back, who's rushed for 1,084 yards and 22 touchdowns this year. 22 rushing touchdowns this year. One of the best running backs in the country. I would say the best running back in the SEC. And then, of course, you've got Devontae Smith, who very well could be the best player in the country. He's not going to win the Heisman. It's more of a quarterback award now. But Devontae Smith very well could be the best player in the country. The wide receiver for Alabama has racked up over 1,300 receiving yards, 15 reception touchdowns. He has a rushing touchdown to his name. He has a punt return for a touchdown to his name. This guy does it all. I put him up there, to me, as the best player in college football. When you look at all the aspects, Devontae Smith has him. I think he's the best player out there, maybe the best player on Alabama. This offense is averaging 49.5 points per game. They've scored 212 points in their last 4 games. They've scored at least 38 points in every game this season. I don't know if anybody can stop this Alabama offense and the big three for the Crimson Tide. You look at Florida. Look at their offense. Kyle Trask, we mentioned him. Many still have him pegged as the Heisman frontrunner despite the poor showing against LSU, where he had 2 interceptions, 3 turnovers total. But Trask, still unbelievable numbers, especially for a season where it was all SEC games. 3,700 plus yards, 3,717 yards here, 40 touchdowns to just 5 interceptions, completing 70.2% of his passes. So Mac Jones and Kyle Trask, they're up there because of their ridiculous stats. They're also up there because they're accurate and they take great care of the football. I mean, you look at this, 8 interceptions combined between these 2 quarterbacks. That's unreal. That's unbelievable. So Kyle Trask, obviously the reason for Florida's success this year. He's not under center. Florida does not have the record that they have. They maybe are not in the SEC championship game. They're not having this type of year. The Gators are averaging 41.2 points per game, and they're averaging 386.4 passing yards per game behind Kyle Trask. That would be expected. You don't have to touch much on the run game. You're not going to hear Dameon Pierce's name called much. The Gators are only averaging 127.1 rushing yards per game, so they're not going to win this game on the ground. We know that. They haven't won a game on the ground all year, so don't expect that to happen now, and it'll change all of a sudden on Saturday. But the names that you should expect to hear are KADARIUS TONEY, the leading wide receiver for Florida right now, 831 yards and 9 touchdowns on the year. And hopefully, I believe we will, hear Kyle Pitts' name as well, the best tight end in America. Gonna be a future NFL star. 641 yards and 11 touchdowns for Pitts. He did not play last week against LSU. He should be back. He's battled injuries all year, should be back for this game against Alabama, and we know the Gators are going to need him. One of the best threats in the country. Built and plays more like a wide receiver, in my opinion, than a tight end, and still such a very difficult guy to cover. So Alabama, Florida, both averaging well over 40 points per game, both great quarterbacks, both great receivers. If you love offense, this is going to be the game for you. You switch it over to defense. You know, we always talk about here the Gridiron expert, and I think it's kind of common knowledge now. You look at yourself and you see you're in a shootout. Who are you going to pick? Who are you going to pick in a shootout? We know both teams have a better offense. Which one has a good defense? Which one has the better defense? And that edge goes to Alabama. No doubt about it. The Crimson Tide, and look, when you've got Nick Saban on the sideline, a defensive-minded coach like that, you would expect that. After Alabama got torched by Ole Miss, they still won the game by 15, but after they allowed, 600-something yards and 48 points, Alabama's defense turned around drastically. The Crimson Tide are allowing just 16.8 points per game on the year. They've allowed just 11 points per game in their last 7 games. Let's keep that in mind. Their last 7 games, they've allowed an average of 11 points per game. Now, I know maybe they aren't against the best opponents. Georgia being one of the better ones. I know the rest. Tennessee, Mississippi State, Arkansas, LSU. Regardless, to allow that many points, and that's not a lot, that's extremely, extremely impressive. The Tide allowing just 227.1 passing yards per game. Big number there, considering the Gators are averaging almost 400 passing yards per game. And Alabama also allowing just 113 rushing yards per game. So a stingy rushing defense, it doesn't matter anyways. The Gators aren't going to run the ball that much to begin with. It's just not going to happen. They're a passing team. So you look at all of that, and the final stat I want to look at for Alabama here on defense is they've done a great job, especially over the last 7 games, of creating pressure and creating turnovers. Alabama has forced 11 interceptions on the year. 11 interceptions on the year, 3 of those being returned for touchdowns. 3 pick sixes on 11 interceptions. Doesn't sound like a lot, but when you consider how difficult that is, it's really, really impressive. And obviously a boost for this Alabama team, considering they're going to have tons of opportunities to get interceptions as Florida's going to air it out nonstop. Alabama also has racked up 28 sacks this season. The pass rush is continually getting better week after week. They just had 8 sacks last week against Arkansas. 8 sacks in one game. And say what you want, it was just Arkansas. I don't really care who it is. 8 sacks in one game is ridiculous. So Alabama's defense, the defensive line, that front seven, going to be very, very tough for this Florida offensive line to handle. Kyle Trask going to have to make good decisions. He's done pretty good job of that so far this year, but he's also going to have to be able to hopefully stand tall in the pocket and deliver the throws when he is under pressure. Florida, their defense, it's lacking. And I think that is, and for lack of better words, it's lacking. The Gators are allowing 26.3 points per game. And by some terms, that's not that bad. To some people, you look at that and you say, all right, that's middle of the pack. But in the SEC, that's not a good number. That's just not a good number. And when you look at what Florida did last week against LSU, and you look how poorly the defense played against the Tigers, you can't help but be concerned and scared for the Gators as they prepare to go up against one of the best offenses in the country. Florida allowed Max Johnson, a quarterback that was making his first start for LSU, first start ever in the swamp, I should add, at night. They allowed him to go for 239 yards and 3 touchdowns last week. Now they're facing a Heisman candidate in Mac Jones, one of the best quarterbacks in the country. The Gators are allowing 242.3 passing yards per game, 142.4 rushing yards per game, and that rushing stat matters because Alabama will run the ball with Najee Harris. Again, they will. Florida really won't, and their run game, even if they try, isn't going to be that successful. In Florida, unlike Alabama, Florida's struggling a little bit in the turnover category, in the turnover department. The Gators have only forced 13 turnovers this year. Granted, 8 of those are interceptions, but not a whole lot of turnovers so far this year. And their defense, in the last 5 games, 3 of those games, they've allowed at least 400 yards of offense. And those 3 opponents were LSU, Arkansas, and Vanderbilt. So they're lacking in the turnover department. They're lacking a little bit in the pass rush, and this Alabama offensive line is pretty dang good. They're allowing tons and tons of yards to obviously inferior opponents, LSU, Arkansas, and Vanderbilt of all teams, the winless Commodores. You can't help, again, but worry and be concerned for this Florida team, again, going up against an Alabama team that's averaging well over 500 yards per game. Something has got to change for this Florida defense if they want to have any chance of hanging in this game and possibly pulling off the monster upset. So you look at the keys to the games, guys. Let's take a look at the keys to the game for Florida and Alabama. We talked on the offense. You could flip a coin, I think, when you look at who has the edge. I think the slight edge goes to Alabama offensively. I think balance-wise, certainly Alabama owns that edge. Speed-wise, Alabama owns that edge, but Florida's right on up there with them. I think the margin is very slim there offensively. Defensively, the margin is huge. It's huge. All in favor of Alabama. So you look at the keys here. Florida's not favored. They're 17-point underdogs. They know that more than likely they're not going to make the playoff, win, or lose. Obviously, if they lose, they're not. Even if they win, they probably won't. We'll touch on that here in a little bit. Keys to the game for Florida. Don't throw shoes. I'm joking. Obviously, that's a major key. Shouldn't do that. But for real, they've got to start fast. You're in the SEC championship game. No one is giving you a fighting chance. No one believes you're going to win this game. So start fast. If you come out there and you pop Alabama in the mouth like that, and all of a sudden Alabama blinks and it's 10-0, 14-0, you might have a good chance to win this game. Or at least keep it close well into the fourth quarter. If you start fast and stun Alabama, they're going to wake up. But Florida needs that cushion because their defense isn't going to win the game for them. Their defense is not going to win the game. So if their offense can show up, start scoring real quick against an improving Alabama defense, one of the best in the country right now. Maybe their defense gets a lucky break, a quick stop, a turnover here and there. You start fast, you're looking good. Another huge key for Florida is the turnovers. And me, that is the only way Florida wins this game. is by getting turnovers and then converting off of them. It's extremely difficult to do, especially against an Alabama team that just doesn't turn the ball over, period. It's extremely difficult to do when your defense hasn't created many turnovers this year, period. But you never know. You get a lucky bounce, ball bounces off the receiver's hands straight into your cornerback's hands. Hey, Marco Wilson can get some redemption. But if Florida can get 14, maybe 17 points off of turnovers, and I know that would require 2 to 3 turnovers on Alabama's part, but you never know. If they can do that and get 14 to 17 points off of that, they can win this game. And they very well will win the game if that happens. So Florida, force the turnovers, find a way to get stops, and when you do it, convert. We all know 3 points isn't going to beat Alabama. You've got to get in the end zone. If I'm Dan Mullen, I know I have nothing to lose, nothing at all to lose. So every 4th and 1, every 4th and 2, every red zone possession, I am going for it, and I'm trying to get the ball in the end zone. Because again, we have nothing to lose. We have nothing to lose. Playoff hopes are done. We're trying to win SEC titles, sure. But again, we have no chance of playing for a natty. So let's just go out there and try to play spoiler. Alabama, what are their keys? I could just sit here and tell you, Alabama, do what you've been doing and then walk away. But we got to give a little more deeper analysis than that. Sure, turnovers are the key to any game. So Alabama, go out there, force some turnovers. See if you can do what LSU did last week and force 3 turnovers off of Kyle Trask, which again is extremely difficult to do. But one thing I would say they need to do is pressure Kyle Trask. Interceptions, fumbles, those are great. But if you can rattle Trask in the pocket, he's not very mobile. If you can get in the backfield and force him into some bad throws, make him throw it away, or lay a couple good hits on him, rattle him early, it could be a very long day for that Florida offense. Because again, Trask is the Florida offense. You take him out, you make him uncomfortable, Florida has nothing. Because again, they're not going to beat you on the ground. Florida gave up 4 sacks last week against LSU. I have no doubt in my mind that Alabama could match that, maybe even exceed that in this SEC championship game. So Alabama needs to get after Kyle Trask. In doing so, you'll make him uncomfortable, and you might be able to force him into some mistakes that will greatly benefit you. Final thing for Alabama is to make sure you shut down either KADARIUS Toney or Kyle Pitts. If you shut down both, great. Shut down one, and you're going to be just fine. So 2, you're set. Even if you just shut down 1, I still think you're set. I would actually say you need to shut down KADARIUS Toney. He's extremely elusive. He's extremely fast. Florida loves to use him not just in the pass game, but a little bit in the run game as well. So shut down KADARIUS Toney. Make sure you tackle him in the open field. You're going to be just fine. So again, pressure Trask, turnover sure, but pressure Trask and shut down one of the big 2 playmakers in KADARIUS Toney or Kyle Pitts. So what's going to happen down in Atlanta on Saturday night? Unfortunately, not a sold-out crowd like it would be under normal circumstances. You're not going to see that at any of these conference championships across the country. So it's going to be a different feel, no doubt about it. But in this game down in Atlanta, I genuinely just don't see any way that Florida wins this game. Which means that, yes, we do have Alabama winning their 9th SEC title. 9th SEC championship in program history. I look at Florida here. What's the morale like down in Gainesville? What's the morale like around this team? You just lost to an LSU team where you were 23-point favorites because you had a bogus, ridiculous, embarrassing, unsportsmanlike conduct play. You know that if you win this game and pull off the upset against Alabama, Florida's not going to blow them out of the water. It would be close. Alabama would remain in the top 4, so you're not really playing spoiler. Alabama's in the playoff regardless, win or lose. If Florida wins the game, more than likely, they still aren't getting into the college football playoff. I can't imagine they would get in as a 2-loss team over maybe a potential Texas A&M if they beat Tennessee this weekend. A 2-loss team that lost to a bad LSU team and then, of course, lost to Texas A&M, who's currently a top 5 team. So if you win, you don't get in. Obviously, if you lose, you don't get in. So what's the morale like? What is there to play for other than, hey, great, we won an SEC title. We're going to a New Year's Six bowl game. The national championship hopes aren't there. So what's the morale like down in Gainesville? Do they even know what they're playing for? Do they really care what they're playing for? I look at Alabama here. They are in a prime position. The offense is just too good. I don't know if there's any team, any defense in the country not Notre Dame, not Clemson, not Ohio State. I don't know if there's any team in the country that can slow down this Alabama offense and that big three like we mentioned earlier. So again, this is going to be a game where you're going to see some great offensive fireworks. You're going to see plenty of points scored. Florida will hang some points on the Crimson Tide. But in the end, the Alabama defense is the difference maker. The defense that is so much better than this Florida defense. We talked about that margin. It's extremely huge. The gap is huge between the Gators and the Crimson Tide. That ultimately is going to be what decides this game. Alabama, Nick Saban, they win the SEC, and they will be the #1 team in the country and the #1 seed in the college football playoff when Selection Sunday rolls around. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share our videos. We have more conference championship games and analysis coming your way later this week. So make sure to share them and make sure to stay tuned. And also make sure to check out everything down in the description below. Exclusive content on our website, thegridironexpert.com. That BetNow promo code that we mentioned, our Patreon account, all of those things for you, the diehard college football fan, right down there in the description. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. And we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.